All right. Bhairava Upasana versus Shiva Upasana. So, how
Okay.
does that work? Yeah. How are the two different? Yeah. Yeah.
Right. They are same, and yet there are differences. Same in the sense, of course, there is a very famous verse in the Shiva Purana, which more or less the gist of it says that there is no difference between Shiva and Bhairava. It is only the Maya of Shiva that makes Bhairava appear different from Shiva. So that is a huge sort of
Okay.
statement, telling fundamentally that these are not different deities. In this regards, I would say, on a practical level, if you're doing the sadhana of Shiva or Bhairava, etc., uh, for the sake of understanding, not necessarily something that you ask me that, produce a quote from the Shastras to prove this, I may not be able to, but there's something that actually works on a practical level. Imagine Shiva is the primary deity, but the moment he enters into the cremation ground, he becomes Bhairava.
Okay.
So long as he's outside of the cremation ground, when you're worshipping him as Somaskanda, when you're worshipping him in the other forms, if Nataraja, this, every form is wonderful, fantastic, everything is wonderful. The moment Shiva enters back into the cremation ground, he takes on the form of Bhairava. In fact, in the great battle between the Asuras, when Shiva destroys Andhakasura, in that moment when he pins Andhaka in the Trishula and lifts him up, it is Bhairava who's actually doing it. He's the aggressive form of Shiva.
All right.
This information is useful in practical upasana of sadhana of Shiva as well as Bhairava. Not only from the larger spiritual perspective, people do Shiva upasana. That's one thing. But if you are doing the upasana from the point of view of prayoga, which is application of power, which is a very important aspect of tantra sadhana, because tantras are not happy with only the understanding that I need to close my eyes and feel blissful and happy. That's wonderful. But what happens to the Shakti that you have gained? If you say you are powerful, you have to give a demonstration of that into the outside world. It is only then that you know that there is a power. I have a power in the head which nobody is aware of. It's as good as non-existent. So this application, this prayoga, and that's why every text in the tantras will mention the prayogas at the end, the application, and this is where this difference between Shiva and Bhairava becomes very important. Because Shiva, the moment he's into the cremation ground, he turns into Bhairava. Being a cremation ground deity, Bhairava Upasana has certain allowances, certain methods which are applicable to Bhairava which will not work with Shiva. For example, you can worship Bhairava using the Panchatattvas that are there in the Tantras. Though in practice today, most of the Bhairava Upasana that happens, it's fine to offer the vegetarian bhogs that are given to Bhairava. It's quite fine. There's a list of things that he likes, very useful. For example, if you make what in Bengali we call payesh, or even in the winter season we offer gurer mishti, sweets made of molasses. Yeah, those are things Bhairava loves very much. Whereas if you make a payesh, you cannot add sugar normally. So there's no harm in adding, but if you don't add it, it's better. These are things he likes. Then there are varas, various kinds of the bhogs that are offered to Bhairava is well known in tradition. Along with it, as the sadhana goes deeper, you will have to offer what is known as karan, which is that ritualized, specifically mantrically purified alcohol, which has been the curses from it has been removed, because every alcohol has 3 types of curses on it. So that's why it's something that is not allowed in the Vedic religions, treated. But Bhairava Upasana in the higher realms, as one goes, if you go really deep, this will come into play. Be absolutely certain of it. There's no way you can avoid this. If you go into the depth, if it has not happened, it means that your sadhana has not reached that depth. He is going to ask for that eventually, because that is something he loves. To the extent that Avinav Gupta and the great masters of Kashmir, who were great upasakas of Bhairava, forms like Swachchanda Bhairava and others, they mention specifically the different types of ingredients used to make alcohol and how they react in the consciousness, how wine, etc., has a link, tremendous link to the tattva of Bhairava, etc. All these are there in the texts. There's not something that has been created out of figment of imagination. And it's evident to a Bhairava Upasaka why Karan becomes important after a certain point. Till that point, there are anukalpas, or substitutes for the actual thing. Coconut water, for example, or gur soaked in water and then water offered to Bhairava, etc. So that is, being a cremation ground deity, this aspect will come in very prominently in Bhairava Upasana. On the other hand, if you are doing Shiva Upasana, you have to do it in the completely sattvic way, following all the rules of normal rules of achara that is in a Vedic Upasana. That is very important. So Shiva Upasana you cannot do that, which is why if a Bhairava Shivalinga, if a Shivalinga, for example, we have Shivalingas, we have lingas where Bhairava can be worshipped specifically. There are signs on that. Yantras of Bhairava can be made, etc. Those lingas can be worshipped with Abhishekam of Karan, but you cannot do that on a Shivalinga. So these two are to be kept separate.
Okay. Okay.
So Shiva Upasana requires the standard things of, you have to be sattvic, you have to offer only sattvic ingredients, you do the Abhishekam in the normal standard way which is to be done, more or less, if you're vegetarian that is preferred actually, if you can do it at a early morning, without having too much of food, etc. Those are wonderful. The other thing is that Shiva, the form of Shiva is very subtle. In my experience and experience of people who have actually, worshipped Shiva a lot, is extremely subtle. So when we say that Shiva is bhole, it's a misconception among people. I was seeing some comments somewhere. When we say Shiva is bhole, it does not mean that Shiva is going to come so easily to you. What it means is that his upasana paddhati is easier than other deities. So if you were to, as the Puranic story says, there was a hunter who had climbed on a tree on a Shivaratri, and he was looking for a deer or something, and a leaf from the tree falls on a Shivalinga, and because of that act, 3 times it happens in the night. So after death, it is the Shivaganas who come and take him instead of the Yama and other deities who were taking him to Naraka, etc. So the idea is that Shiva is satisfied with a small worship, but this satisfaction is going to give you some blessings of Shiva. It is an entirely different matter if you say that, no, I want siddhi of Shiva, I want to enter into a state of communion with Shiva. That is very, very, very difficult. That you have to transform yourself into a saint, and for all measures it may take you multiple lifetimes of serious efforts of Shiva Upasana before he responds. He is the kind of deity who is aware, but he may not so easily come to you, because he is at a very subtle level, Shiva Upasana. Bhairava, on the other hand, because he is that form of Shiva which deals with transformation, death, for example, directly links to death is cremation ground presence. So he is in a way close to the physical existence that we have. He is a deity who is slightly closer than the very transcendental realms in which Shiva exists, in the Shiva Loka. He is somebody who comes down here closer. And because he is closer, the one thing with Bhairava Upasana is that it will work much faster than Shiva Upasana, given all things are constant. If everything is right, there's a decent Upasaka who's told the right paddhati, and Shiva and Bhairava, both of them are being worshipped, it is statistically much greater probability that you will have responses from Bhairava much faster than you will get a response from Shiva, because he is closer to this plane. So in fact, one of the things that I have experienced, and that I was advised by people who were very great Bhairava Upasakas, and nature has been kind that I've actually had interaction with fantastic, very, very high caliber Bhairava Upasakas in my life, or people who have attained to a close communion, or sort of attained to Siddhi of Bhairava. I've seen them, I've experienced how they are. So if you take one step towards Bhairava, he will take 2 steps towards you. He's like that. See, even in our natural conception, if you look at it from the historical point of view, dogs are one of the things that got first domesticated and became sort of, however, through evolution, it became a friend of the human race. Okay, whatever way it happened, I'm not going through the science of it. It's the same way. He is a deity who is very close by. He is a deity, you call him once, he'll take 2 steps towards you. He's going to help you out. He is going to act as a friend, as a philosopher, as a protector, as a guide, as a guru, and everything, if you call him. That is the beauty of Bhairava. That is why he is the primary deity to worship if you have to really experience the higher powers in the tantric field, because he is the one who brings the knowledge to the humans. He is a guru. He's a guru in the Kola Marga. He's one of the divine forms. The Ananda Bhairava form is what, from him comes the marg of the, the Sri Vidya Sampradayas, the Tripur Sundari Sampradayas of, which are associated with the Kola path, etc. So, same way Mahakal Bhairava is there. So, Bhairava forms are easier to invoke and experience, relatively easier. I'm not saying that today you start, tomorrow you're going to experience Bhairava. No. You have to at least consistently carry on the Upasana for 3 years. If you get anything in a time less than 3 years, it is not going to last with you. Anything less than that is useless. 3 years consistently Bhairava Upasana, either you will break away from the Upasana, or if you carry on, there is more or less sure chance that you will get responses from the Devata.